It's very busy. There's quite a lot to develop. FHQ Developments is still a very young company, so there is a lot of foundational work that needs to be done. Policies, procedures, those types of things need to be developed. We have a small staff, so that needs to be expanded upon as we grow. We're really starting to see some growth now in some of our developments, and so as we're growing, we need to add more assets to the company just to support the day-to-day. I'm lucky enough to have a very professional board and a very good chair that I can depend on and bounce ideas off of. We have, in governance, would be a working board where they're involved a little bit more with some of the developments. And when you don't have as much employees, you need that support from your board. So having a working board allows me to meet with them often and be able to bounce ideas off and develop things a little quicker. But you know, the typical day-to-day is answering a lot of phone calls, setting up meetings, networking, developing the business, finding new partners, going through the due diligence, making sure we're selecting the right partnerships for us, because we have multiple companies that are interested in working with us. It's just they have, everyone has different intentions, everyone has different ideas of what a partnership looks like or what a relationship looks like with us. So we have to make sure that it benefits us at the end of the day and benefits our communities. It's very difficult. I did enjoy what I did with RBC. I enjoyed working with communities day in and day out. But some of the challenges that I began to see in the communities was things became very cyclical. And I started to understand the cycle of which we operate in our own communities. And you know, the constant need, the constant demand for more services in our communities, and you know, that's the system. That's a system that we live in, and I don't want to just be another component to that system. I want to be a solution to getting out of that system. So the only solution for a lot of our communities is looking at business development. So if we're not building wealth, if we're not controlling our own destinies and how we reinvest our own revenue sources, we're going to be stuck. And we're going to be constantly stuck in that same dependency cycle of the system and asking the same things over and over. You know, I see this as a big opportunity to do that. And you know, I've been able to create quite a reputation with a lot of communities, so I knew coming over here I'd be able to help more communities, not just the 11 that we serve, and that is happening, that is transpiring. We do have quite a number of other communities that have a big interest in being a part of what we're doing in developments, and you know, I'm only too happy to oblige and to help them as well. And you know, we can grow together. That's what it's about, right? Being able to help one another. We can't just work in silos anymore. Working in silos doesn't get us anywhere. We often end up competing with one another and stepping on each other's toes and you know, frustrating one another. But if we start working together, break those silos, start working together, and foster more development, more diverse development within our communities, we're going to be able to achieve a lot more. We're owned by 11 First Nations, well, 12 shareholders, including the Tribal Council. So we started off, there was no investment from our communities, but we did structure ourselves to become the development corporation for the communities. So we started off with zero capital, and we knew that we had to develop business opportunities quickly and strategically. So one of the very key points was to have a very high capacity board that can deliver strategy and develop opportunity, and that's what we focused on from the beginning, was setting that strategy. And so we went from having zero capital to invest into companies to having quite a number of multi-millions in assets now over a short 6-year time period. And it's all been based on strategy and relationships and networking, and we're continuing to grow. And we're looking at multiple industries, so we got to stay very involved with a lot of what's going on. And the economic climate for Saskatchewan has of course changed quite a bit just within these past 6 years. And so we have to be, knowing that we're small, we're nimble enough to make some moves and become a part of some of these opportunities quicker. Well, I think some of the bigger challenges, and it's something that stems from the business ventures that we had early on. So the Development Corporation kind of came out of the ashes of some previous business development or businesses that the communities invested in together, where there was no governance in place, there was no Development Corporation, there was no liability, and risks were not taken care of, and it allowed for too much day-to-day interruption from the communities, because of course our communities, we're dealing with constant social need and demand from our communities, and sometimes those become overwhelming, and they affect your day-to-day business operations. And so decision making, although it was with good intentions to help the communities or to cut them a break, sometimes it affected business, and it affected day-to-day business. And so knowing that history and knowing what we have now, we have to constantly remind our communities that what we're doing is for the long term. We're not in this for the short game. We're not in this for the short cash flow from the companies. We're here for the long term. So how do we build a long-term strategy? How do we ensure that our shareholders are happy with what we're doing, but also respect that we're not providing things such as dividends right now, but we will eventually over time as we create that sustainability within the businesses and as we continue to grow. So that's the most important piece to being able to work with the communities, is getting them to understand that. And as well, we are going to compete. They are trying to create their own development corporations. They are establishing the governance for it. They're creating businesses, creating partnerships, and sometimes we're going to compete with one another. But at the end of the day, they need to understand that if we've outbid them on a project, that they're still winning because they are a shareholder of the company. But it's good business practice for us to be able to keep each other on our toes, to constantly push each other, to make sure we have the right partners, to make sure that they're modeling themselves after our successes as well, because we want to see them be successful. And there'll be a number of different things that we'll do with our communities as well going forward to ensure that we're helping to build their capacity as well for economic development.
What are some of the principles that guide the kinds of developments that you do?
Well, it's commitment to capacity building, making sure that we're helping to develop some of our own people, and looking at how we develop them within our companies. We're very early on, so there's still a lot of that work that needs to be done in policy, and as these companies grow, it's a little tougher at the beginning, but it's building that out eventually over time, and making sure that our partnerships are staying committed to what it is we're trying to accomplish, so long-term sustainable. It's about building livelihoods. At the forefront of any family is being able to work and provide for your family. So creating job opportunities through these companies is very, very important. And that our own companies respect and understand some of our own cultural norms that need to be built into the companies to respect some of our own employees, and making sure that they have enough of a foundation to continue to grow. There's the commitment to continue growing and continue reinvesting and building capacity in many different areas, not just sticking to the few that you know. We have to test ourselves and challenge ourselves to be able to look outside of that and look at other industries that we may not have the experience in yet, but we're willing to roll up our sleeves and learn and do what we can to be a part of those as well. Well, that's a good question, because we do get quite a number of different potential partners and new companies that are looking to partner with us strategically because of certain procurement opportunities that are being developed from industry and from government. So in those types of cases, government or a client will be looking at carving out a specific portion of procurement for a contract. And sometimes some of these companies will come to us and say, okay, let's partner. You'll help us meet the minimum standard, and we'll be able to participate or put in a bid and potentially win, because there's so many points that are awarded to an Aboriginal partnership. We're not looking at that, not just that piece. We want to know what's the long term. What is the long-term game with this company? I know we've had some joint ventures in the past, and I'm reviewing some of those joint ventures, because what we're looking at is more towards the limited partnership model and developing more, a little bit more control over the companies and their future and their strategies, so that they are staying committed to the things that we value, which is capacity building and reinvestment back into our communities, and growth. Not just looking at one project. We want to look at multiple projects for multiple years. And it's those companies that come to us and talk about those types of things first, rather than just talk about one project. We want to hear about what are your plans with us going into the future on any project. I know there are Aboriginal procurement opportunities out there with industry. We don't want to just be that company that just does Aboriginal procurement. We want to be able to eventually compete on the grander scale and be able to compete like anybody else, and not just be looked at as the Aboriginal company applying for to bid on a project. We want to be FHQ Developments applying on their own, not just because we're Aboriginal, but because we're a business and we're trying to be successful in developing a stronger business. So that's what's important to us when we're looking at those types of partnerships with industry, and those are the types of conversations that we're interested in having. It depends on the companies. Some will come more prepared than others. Some have heard of us. Some know the reputation that we're building out in the market. We're obviously speak a different language than what they're used to when we have those types of conversations about long-term as opposed to short-term, because sometimes in our communities, if there's not enough business capacity, then they're not asking the right questions. They're only looking for the short-term, maybe cash flow gains, or but we're looking for the long term. So we're asking them the tougher questions. We're asking them, what are they doing already? What are they committed to doing? What type of agreements can we make with one another? Are you open to negotiation? Those types of conversations need to happen, and so the ones that are well prepared know that we're ready to ask those types of questions, and those that don't come prepared, I think we catch them by surprise. With most of the partners, we expect them to do a little bit of their homework too, and make sure that they know exactly who we are, because we take the time to try and learn who they are ahead of time as well, so that I know exactly who they are and what they're bringing to the table. Success to me is developing more opportunities for our communities. You take a youth coming up in school, and I need to feel comfortable at the end of the day that we can employ that individual, that we can put them to work, and not just in one industry, not just in one type of role. I want there to be multiple roles available to them. I need to know that they're out there as well, building their capacity to be able to come back and build successful businesses. Success to me will, I really want to see us take some of our companies and eventually go public, being able to have public share offerings on companies that we may buy into. That would be success, is to see some of that type of growth, that rapid expansion of growth. And we can do that here. We can do business in multiple locations, whatever that may be. But as long as we're creating more opportunity and building the internal foundation of the company to support some of our own First Nations youth that are coming up, so that they could be proud of a company that they can come and work for, or that they can work to be a part of. I want them to be able to go through high school and say, hey, I want to work for one of the companies for FHQ developments. That would be success. And seeing, and building some of that even for employees of our companies, seeing that transition of the hardworking family being driven down into their own kids, so that they grow up knowing work ethic, knowing the types of contributions that their parents are making towards their future through our companies. That's what would be success. And knowing that people have so many different interests, we can't just be in one industry. So that's why I said we have to challenge ourselves to building our capacity to understand more industries, so that our kids can get into more things. I want them to be in business. I want them to be in science. They may come up with a technology in the future that we can use and develop through one of our companies. There's so many opportunities to continue growing. We're looking at healthcare. There's a lot of different areas that we can develop in. So as we grow, we'll create those opportunities for them to be a part of what we're doing. Well, like anything, there's politics. So people view politics sometimes as a negative, but they can be used as a positive. So in our case, you look at the structure and governance that we have in our board. We have politicians that sit on our board. And in having that, there's still a level of respect out there between government to government relationships, where political leaders will meet with political leaders, CEOs will meet with CEOs, and there still needs to be that level of political alignment to push specific opportunities for us, especially in these early stages. You need that. You need that political push to be able to ensure that if there's a pipeline being built, that we are at least a part of that project, or benefiting from that in some way, rather than not. Because too often times we've seen so much development around us. We've been forced onto reserves for such a long time, and you see this whole world developing around us, and we haven't had the opportunity to participate. And now that we're not on the reserve, now we're starting to create more noise about our rights and our rights to the land and some of the developments that are happening. We're not asking to have handouts, we're asking to be participants of what's happening. And so when we look at the opportunities that we're looking at, we want to participate, we want to be a part of that. And sometimes people don't listen. So if they're not listening, then we have to go back and use that political realm to be able to have the right conversations with the right people, that the key decision makers, to be able to set up proper policies or whatever it needs to be to ensure that we're being able to actively engage in the economy. Biggest one would be networking. Students always overlook networking. They don't take the time to go and meet people, or your own shyness, that affects your ability to go out there and share who you are. When you talk about business and you talk about entrepreneurship, and people always tell you about going out there and selling their business, well, you got to be able to sell yourself too. You got to be able to promote yourself and make sure that people know who you are and what you stand for. If they don't know that, then they don't know who you are. You become just another person walking by, right? You need to be able to stand out. So that was something that I learned very early on, was if I'm going to be successful, I need to go out there and build a network. Regardless of my fear of speaking in front of people, I need to get out there and speak to as much people as possible. And you become a product of the people you surround yourself with as well. So if you're constantly surrounding yourself with very smart people, people that are involved in multiple industries, or in industries that you have an interest in, well, you're going to learn their lingo, you're going to learn about all the little finer details that you can't learn in a book. You need to learn about how to deal with people, you need to learn about being able to make a statement with people, and you need to be able to, what I always thought about was, after somebody meets me, I need to know that they have at least a little tidbit of information that they can remember me by. And most times that's worked, and that's why job opportunities for me became very easy, because I've always left that little bit of information with those individuals. I always stood out just a little bit more than other people, because I gave them just enough information to pique their interest and to make them know that I wasn't just another student. This is me, this is what I do, this is, I have a very different type of perspective on things. So networking is always key, and just not being shy, going out there, having confidence. I know that's tough to say and tough to do sometimes, but it's those things that help get you recognized, and then the opportunities will come from that, and you just gotta keep pushing.